Hafide Todosamzu, thank you for your participation in today's virtual public hearing. This virtual public hearing is convened by the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs. For the record, in accordance with the Open Government Law, public hearing notices were given to all senators, stakeholders, and all main media broadcasting outlets, with the first notice being issued on Thursday, September 3rd, 2020, and the second notice on Wednesday, September 9th, 2020. The public notice for today's briefing was also posted on the legislature's website at making sure I got all the correct number of W's in there, .guamlegislature.org. The time is now 5:05. This virtual public hearing is now called to order. Seduas Maasi for your virtual attendance to this evening's virtual hearing. Today's public hearing is being held with regards to Resolution 365-35 LS, or Prutehi Mambazena Siha, urging the U.S. Navy to, in identified habitats, cease its use of active sonar that harms marine mammals, use passive sonar to detect the presence of marine mammals, and provide all information as declared necessary by the government of Guam in order to determine boundaries of habitat areas of beaked whales and other cetaceans. And I just want to note that what we are calling for here, what we are urging, is something that currently does exist in the testing and training areas of Hawaii and California. I also want to note and say Seduas Maasi to my colleagues from both sides of the aisle who have agreed to be co-sponsors for this resolution. We have Senators Therese M. Terlahi, Senator Sabina Flores Perez, Talina Cruz Nelson, Clinton E. Rigel, Joe S. San Agustin, Regine Bisco Lee, William M. Castro, and Tello T. Taitagui. I am very grateful for their participation in both the resolution, but also this hearing. So with us today, we do have quite a number of people are here, and I'm very appreciative for that. We do have, and I'll go in the order as best I can, as is on the resolution. We do have Senator Therese Terlahi here. We have Senator Sabina Flores Perez. We have Senator Will Castro and Senator Tello Taitagui. So again, I thank all of you for being here. We also have joining with us this afternoon, Brent Tibbetts from the Division of Aquatic and Wildlife at the Department of Agriculture. We have Mallory Morgan, who is the Sustainable Marine Tourism Coordinator with the Guam Coral Reef Initiative. We have Joni Kerr, who will hopefully be joining us. She's an associate professor at GCC and also the Eco Warrior Advisor. We have Edwin Regis, who is the administrator of the Guam Coastal Management Program. We have Dr. Debbie Allen with Taladza, Micronesia. We have CNMI Congresswoman Sheila Babauta, Seduas Maasi for joining us virtually across the waters. We have Kyle Dahalig, who is representing Guam Youth Climate Strike. And we hope to be joined later by Jesse Chargala from Independent Guahan. And we have various testimonies that have been sent in as well. I believe I've caught everybody, but please let me know if there are others here that are representing other organizations, and I will make sure to announce you as well. So with this, again, thank you so much for joining me. And before we open up discussions from participants of this virtual public hearing, following the agenda made available at the virtual link posted within the committee's communication provided to confirmed hearing participants, I'd first like to provide some general rules of conduct for all those who are participating and in attendance. The conduct of this virtual informational briefing shall be as follows. 1, all participants must abide by rules of conduct and quality assurance standards, including broadcasting from a quiet room with little to no interruptions. The use of virtual backgrounds is not permitted. Broadcasting from a room with adequate lighting, specifically to ensure that a participant's face is not backlit, but visible at all times when speaking. Please ensure that when you are called upon to speak, that you are unmuted and that you are speaking clearly into your microphone. The chair will recognize individuals who have been confirmed as participants. Individuals providing oral testimony shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name and title for record-keeping purposes. The order of questioning will begin with the panel of senators. Each panel member will be allowed to pose 1 question per round and then may be provided another round if further questions are necessary or desired. Oral testimonies received shall be confined to the substance of the issues in the agenda. And personal inference as to the character of a senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this rule of conduct will be resulting in removal from the virtual public hearing by the host. I ask that all participants to keep their comments or testimony to, typically I say within 5 minutes, but I feel that the testimony here is very important. And so if there is written testimony that you are following, please feel free to read all of that written testimony. So for today, I will have a few introductory remarks, and then we will move on to the hearing of expert testimony and then on to community testimony. Then we will have a few moments for concluding remarks and adjournment. And if there's any senator that would like to add to those closing remarks, I will open up the floor if anybody wishes to convey some of their closing sentiments. So we will now begin the virtual public hearing itself. More than 20 marine mammal species are found in the waters surrounding the Mariana Islands, including some of what are considered to be endangered, such as humpback whales. I have come to learn from our local experts that our waters are significant breeding, birthing, and resting grounds for numerous of them. At the same time, studies are showing that US use of active sonar in military training, such as the type that takes place throughout the Marianas by the US Navy, has a detrimental impact on marine mammals. It is because of these potential negative impacts that I worked with my colleagues to introduce this resolution, Protehi Mambedzena Siha, which calls on the US Navy to, as it does in the testing and training areas for Hawaii and California, cease the use of active sonar, but also underwater detonations in critical habitat areas for marine mammals. And in those areas, the testing and training does still continue. It's just with these certain protections that are in place. I want to thank my co-sponsors again for showing their support for the protection of our marine mammals by signing this resolution. As an elected leader, this resolution is very much in line with my larger philosophy about legislative policy, which is tied to protecting and sustaining our community and our community's resources. I strongly believe that the health of both our community as well as our economy is heavily tied to the well-being of our environments, whether it be by protecting rare and valuable medicinal plants at Letexan, keeping our drinking water safe, or seeking to protect our marine ecosystems. Since introducing this resolution last month, It has been heartening to see the broad community support for the protection of our marine mammals. In the past few weeks, my office has received dozens of letters of support, and I'm pleased to say it's from a variety of areas. I've had discussion with Tatasi or seafarers, traditional seafarers. There are boat operators that are also very concerned about their livelihoods and the dolphins and other mammals that they experience, as well as from a wide range of others in our community. So we also received testimony from biologists from New Zealand, Hawaii, and the US, chiming in about the risks that active sonar has to marine mammals. A community petition was started just this past Monday, just a few days ago, so about 4 or so days ago, really, in support of this resolution. And it has already garnered over 1,100 signatures in really a very short period of time. For some in the community as a result, further, it has cost taxpayers tens of millions of dollars to rectify the damage caused. Marine mammals play similar roles in a sense in our aquatic ecosystems, and preserving them and protecting them means to preserve and protect part of what makes our island home special, as well as that which feeds us and provides us livelihoods through boat tours and fishing. Another constituent sent me this poem titled Dying Whale by the commuter poet. I'd like to share a portion of it to help us understand the gravity of the situation. Giant whale lying on the beach, what have you come to show us? For years, you quietly graced this blue planet, and now you spend your final hours exposed to the world, naked, helpless, dying. Far from the familiarity of the deep, separate from the safety of your pod. What courage you have, great whale, in delivering your message for all to see. Sharing your final suffering, motionless, dignified, giant, and sad. The poem reminds us that when nature is forced into unnatural situations, like whales washing up dead on our shores, it is not a random tragedy, but it is a signal or a sign that something is wrong, that we need to act to preserve and protect our natural resources. We need to speak up, and we need to use our voice. As this resolution highlights, communities in California and Hawaii have already pushed for and successfully received protections for their marine mammals from active sonar and underwater detonations in critical habitat areas. Do we deserve any less? Is this just another way that our environment, our culture, our interests are afforded less consideration because of how far we are away from the US, both geographically and otherwise? I would hope not, but speaking up is one of the first steps that we have to take. As a final thought to my opening remarks, I've spent the past few weeks proposing to the media and the community that protecting these marine mammals doesn't only make environmental sense, but it does make economic sense as well. The resolution highlights the important role that our marine mammals play in supporting the visitor industry, which has historically been Guam's main economic driver. In 2019 alone, there were 14 companies which identified providing boat tours wherein dolphin watching was a highlight. Over 340,000 tourists availed themselves of these tours last year. That made up a significant portion of their sightseeing activities. At a time when our island is seeking to reposition itself and reimagine things such as its tourism foundation, I want to remind us that many of the answers lie within our waters. Within us, within our culture, within our jungles, and within our waters, we can see this in terms of sustainable industries, food security, circular economic development, and definitely the choices we make as we move ahead, while ensuring that what we have here is built upon and isn't sacrificed instead. As we look ahead to rebuilding and innovating the reestablishment of our tourism market, preserving what we have and making what our part of the world and the Pacific has as beautiful and special is going to be essential in giving visitors an authentic and long-lasting experience, which studies show that that is what they are seeking in this post-COVID world. Okay, so a very long introduction. I apologize for that. But with that, I want to open the floor to those that are here to testify. And then, as I mentioned, after the first 4 or 5, I'd like to open it up for a round of questions if the fellow senators here have a question that they would like to ask of those that have come here to testify. So we will start off with Mr. Brent Tibbetts, who is a biologist from the Department of Agriculture and often our point of contact. Everybody always pointed me in his direction when I was at the very basis of this for gaining insight into our whale and dolphin populations of the Marianas. Sijus Maasi for being here, Mr. Tibbetts, and you may unmute yourself, begin your testimony by stating your name and position, and then to please offer your insights.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Brent Tibbetts. I'm a fisheries biologist with the Guam Department of Agriculture, Division of Aquatic and Wildlife Resources. For many years, I've been a person who responds to whale incidents that happen on the island, whale strandings, whale mortality, or even whale sightings. I get reports of these. Through this and through some fortunate to take some training with a whale lab in Hawaii, I've come to appreciate that as you said, the diversity of marine mammals we have around Guam, at least 24 species of cetaceans, as you said, whales and dolphins. Also, we've gotten a feeling for the presence, both geographic as well as temporal, where they are around Guam and what time they are around Guam. These are things that are important, as you've said, they're very important for the economy of Guam. They're important for just the residents of Guam to know these are there. And their importance to the ecosystem is not known, but because it's unknown, it's that much more important that they are protected. If we don't know what the impacts would be when something happens to these marine mammals. So it's critical that more information is gathered about them before we can be comfortable if something does happen to them or not. There's a long history. There have been sightings of marine mammals around Guam for more than 150 years, and that continues to this day. We get sightings reported almost weekly of various types of whales and dolphins around Guam. We do know that occasionally we do get marine mammals stranding on Guam. Certain species very rarely, and certain species more frequently, and certain species more frequently in some, it seems to be in some relation with human activities. That is a concern, is that there is some natural mortality where occasionally a marine mammal will wash up, but if it's something that's done in correlation with a human activity, then it's something that's of concern. It's something that it seems that we should be able to do something about to minimize the impacts that human activities are having on these animals in the ocean.
Sijus Maasi for that. So you gave us quite a bit of detail talking about the history, the number of sightings, the wide variety of species. And I think you've also, if you wouldn't mind adding to that a little bit about the breeding and the birthing and the resting grounds, how each one of those is significant so that we can understand that a little bit.
Certainly, thank you, Senator. We know that some of the marine mammals in the Marianas are rather resident. They spend most, if not all, of their time in the Mariana Islands, but others are migratory. They just pass by the Marianas certain times of year. If nothing else, they generally, the migrating marine mammals, the Mariana Islands provide some protection from winds, waves, and currents coming from the east to the west. Most of the time, reports of migratory marine mammals are occurring along the west coast of the islands. That's kind of the lee side of the islands for things out in the water. They're a little bit in the shelter from winds, waves, and currents coming from the east in this part of the world. Also, several marine mammals have been documented to give birth in the area. We know the spinner dolphins, the resident spinner dolphins. We've seen many reports of juveniles with adults here. We've also documented spotted dolphin giving birth here. Sperm whales have been photographed giving birth here. Sperm whales are an endangered species. And recently, studies with NOAA have shown that the Mariana Islands, particularly up around Saipan, are critical for the northwest population of Pacific humpback whales. They have been seen many years in a row resting on the western side of Saipan, and also adults have been seen with very young calves multiple years in a row, and the same female with calves multiple years in a row. So it's shown that they are coming there to pup and rest and nurse their young, and that they are returning to do that year after year after year. So it's an indication of how important the Marianas are to those animals in particular, those another endangered species of marine mammal, the humpback whales.
Yes, so that helps us have a deeper understanding about the significance of these sites, and certainly something like rearing these pups, giving birth, feeding and resting here in their migratory route, those all sound incredibly important. Now, you mentioned a couple of them as endangered. How many species are you aware of are endangered in our waters?
We document 24 species of cetaceans have been documented in the waters around Guam and the Marianas, and I believe 6 of them, 25% of them, are endangered. The humpback whales, you mentioned the sperm whales, also other large whales, blue whales, sea whales. I believe, I don't know if fin whales are as well, but I believe 6 of the 24 are endangered. All marine mammals are protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act in U.S. waters. If animals are under further threat, either populations are low or limited range or something else, they can be afforded additional protection under the Endangered Species Act. And several of these species are in a status where they need to be afforded endangered species protection as well.
Wow. Okay. So I'm still on the learning curve here, and I knew about maybe 3 of them, but I didn't realize it was as many as 6. So thank you very much for that, and I'm sure the other senators will have questions for you. We'll go ahead and hear from a few others first. If we could hear from Ms. Mallory Morgan, and if you could unmute yourself and begin with your name and your position, and then begin with your testimony.
Half a day, everybody. Thank you, Senators, so much for your time and all of your hard work and putting Resolution 36535 forward. My name is Mallory Morgan, and I am the Sustainable Marine Tourism Coordinator at the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. And I am intimately aware of the extreme importance of the protection of our marine environment and all of its inhabitants, specifically as it relates to tourism. For this reason, I am in full support of Resolution 365-35. Guam is an island of extreme natural beauty, and we are uniquely located near the most diverse marine region in the world. We know from over 3 decades of data collected from exit surveys conducted by the Guam Visitors Bureau, Guam's natural beauty has consistently been one of the top motivations for traveling to Guam. In fact, recently, over 30% of visitors cited specifically Guam's marine environment as a reason for choosing Guam over many other competitive destinations. Dolphin watching in particular is a popular tourism activity that would greatly benefit from Resolution 365-35. Guam has at least 15 businesses that offer dolphin watching packages, and in fiscal year 2019, over 340,000 tourists reported dolphin watching while on Guam. It's important we protect Guam's dolphin and whale populations for future generations to come. It's not only the right thing to do given overwhelming scientific evidence of the severe and painful harm that sonar inflicts on marine mammals, but also the right thing to do to protect these natural assets for our local businesses. While I recognize the US military is as steadfast in our region, this should not detract from researching, developing, and employing strategies that inflict the least harm on Guam's environment, economy, and people. When and where there is an option to do better, we should. I would like to add that as we think about reducing negative impacts to the marine mammals in this public hearing, we have the opportunity to simultaneously think about the positive outcomes we can aim for. While dolphin watching is a well-established business here on Guam, I encourage you to think about the ways in which we can leverage this industry to further contribute to protection and conservation of local dolphins and whales. Citizen science programs, observer records, and a sightings database should be set up with marine tour operators to contribute to Guam's understanding of these incredibly valuable marine animals. Encouraging growth of ecotourism and more environmentally friendly tourism practices will help protect what makes this island so special for generations to come. We all have a part in protecting these species, including military, businesses, recreational users, and the local community. In conclusion, I am in full support of Resolution 365-35. It is incredibly important for the well-being of our island's residents, both on land and in the water. Thank you for your time on this critical issue, and Sizuz Maasi.
Sizuz Maasi for your testimony, and I think you very you outlined the importance of this to the many sectors of our community, including our local businesses. You know, we have a lot of reliance right now on the dolphins and the whale sightings. And we certainly want to be able to continue to make sure that that's going to be able to flourish. It's a large part of, as you outlined, what people are doing when they come here. And it's allowing for what seems like a pretty sizable number of entities to offer these boat tours. And I looked around a little bit. They add quite a bit to our economy. People do pay a pretty, a pretty good amount of money to go, and that shows that it's a quality sightseeing aspect that we offer, and something that they're very, very interested in. So yeah, I think that gives us a lot to think of, and definitely thank you for your testimony. I do want to mention that another co-sponsor to the resolution has entered, Sizuz Maasi, for coming here, Senator Regine Biscoli. So thank you very much. We're going to hear from just a couple others, and then we'll give the senators a chance to ask some questions. Okay, next in our lineup, we have Joni Kerr hasn't been able to come in yet, but we do have Edwin Regis, who's the administrator of the Guam Coastal Management Program. So if you could share a little bit of what you've been doing along these lines, maybe about your interaction and study of our dolphins and whales, or I know that you've been doing some other work as well. If you could fill us in on those aspects.
Absolutely. So, buenas, Madam Chair, buenas senators, and also Congresswoman Babauta, thank you for allowing me to come and brief the committee. My name is Edwin Regis, and I'm here today to provide an update to the committee in terms of BSP's role in closing out the federal consistency determination process on the MIT that we conducted under the terms of the Coastal Zone Management Act, and what our future engagements with the Navy will be with the administration in the next steps. So as you're aware, we came before the legislature sometime in November, I think in 2019, in which we talked about how we were concerned about the living marine policies, and how there's a likelihood that there would be an inconsistency with the military able to comply with that policy. And so that turned out to be the case. in July 18, GCMP notified the Office for Coastal Management that we have objected to the DOD's Marianas Island and Testing and Training Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement, in which we requested the governor to send a letter to Rear Admiral Admits to request for informal mediation. And what this would do is, while our objection will be or has been, will be proceeded upon despite our objection, the request for informal mediation will allow us to look at ways that we can work together to address the concerns that were the basis for our objection. On July 22nd, the Navy responded back to the governor and basically said that they're going to still proceed with, despite our objection, and that they're going to decline our request for informal mediation. But however, in the Navy's letter to the governor, they did provide an opportunity where we can still work together under the terms of a standard operating procedure that we are going to develop. And so our office had to make a decision of whether or not we wanted to fully engage the authorities of the CZMA, knowing that is very likely, and this is in consultation with NOAA's attorneys, as well as other regional coastal zone management partners, that it's very likely, based on historic cases like this, that the CZMA would not be an effective tool to deter the Navy from fully engaging in the activities that they presented in the MIT. However, by looking at by taking advantage of the standard operating procedure, going that route, this would allow us to really bypass the formalities of having to engage the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Defense, and all this letter writing. We call it letter tennis. That's gonna go between the two federal agencies. What the governor wanted to do was really just to get us down into finding solutions and working with the Navy on how do we develop an SOP that speaks to the government's interest in protecting our marine sources. So we decided to not formally pursue an objection, or to not formally ask for Department of Commerce to have the Navy reconsider, but we decided to work directly with the Navy in developing that SOP. Now the SOP, while we haven't finished finalizing the document, it is based on solid principles. And we know that when we go into developing the SOP, there is a solid commitment to include the government of Guam in developing the SOP. So that's a very good first step. Another principle is a commitment to maintaining open communication with the government to present priority issues. So this certainly is a good opportunity for us to come to the table, but ready to present an issue. Another principle is a commitment to create a platform for forum and discussion that allows for two-way communication. So this is more of a rules of engagement, where when we come to the table, we have to be prepared that this is going to be a two-way conversation. Again, this is with the government of Guam, subject matter experts, and the Navy experts on matters of the MIT. There's a commitment to share data, and as well as provide opportunities for enrichment and training. And so those different items that I mentioned, that's the principles that will go into developing the SOP. And we're hoping that we can meet with the Navy sometime soon. We'll see how this whole COVID thing plays out, but it is the administration's top priority to make sure that they get the Navy to the table, and then we fully engage in this SOP process. So there are some specific examples that I can go over, or if you like, or I can take questions on the side. And so that's my update for this body. Thank you.
Well, and that's a lot for us to think about, and very important for us to hear just how these processes have gone. And to me, I think this underlines the importance of this resolution, that we are separate branches, but it's even stronger as a statement when we're working together. That the legislature has a strong stance, the governor has a strong stance, and that we are just standing united to see some real difference be made on behalf of our community, our local entrepreneurs, and the environment that we're here, all of us, whichever branch we are, to protect. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a few examples, because I'm not sure what that means exactly, and then we can open it up to a round of questions.
So certainly, one of the charge that Governor Leon Guerrero wanted to make sure that we take up is this really focus on what she calls the hardening of our legal armors, and that really speaks to the legal mechanisms that support each of the different policies. Now, as you know, federal consistency is based on an approved policies that have statutory or legal mechanisms that help interpret that policy. And so, for example, on the Living Marine Resource Policy, the very first policy that leans to for interpretation of that is the Guam Seashore Reserve, or I'm sorry, the Guam Territorial Seashore Protection Act. And in the Guam Territorial Seashore Protection Act, it calls for the creation of a seashore reserve plan. Now, while that plan was authorized since the 70s, no plan has ever been submitted. And so this is important that we really take the time to look back at what the statute says in terms of how do we enforce that and how do we interpret the policy, and come up with good statutes and come up with a good plan that helps us to speak to the protection of our resources of the time. Our office has taken up that charge, and we're working on creating the Seashore Protection Act. We're working on creating the Territorial Seashore Protection Plan, and so that is an initiative that we just kicked off last month, and we have some federal resources that are helping us do that. So we're certainly very excited that that's going to be hopefully transmitted to this body or to the legislature in sometime in 2022, I believe, for adoption. So that's one example of hardening of mechanisms. Some of the examples that we want to bring up with the Navy in terms of what this SOP will cover are things like the concerns for cumulative and secondary impacts. So if you take the activities in AGAT and PD in terms of the detonations in the safety zone, agencies brought up concern that they were looking at what are the impacts for bioaccumulation and things like marine debris and sediment resuspension. And they recommended, or they suggested that what we need to make sure that we can do is validate any post-activity incident reports or post-activity technical reports as a result of that activity taking place. So the Navy agreed to that is something that they can do, is provide that monitoring and provide that coordination with our departments as they go through those different activities. Other activities that we think that we can make some progress on is notification. So in terms of looking at in terms of active use of sonar or the use of active sonar, we want that to be well coordinated with the different agencies, not only in Guam but also in the CNMI. So we're talking with our coastal zone management program in the north, and seeing how we can coordinate on the different activities that would really affect the archipelago. There are other discussions that we can get into the specifics in this SOP, such as triage or coral restoration for boat groundings or ship groundings, and how does that look like in terms of response, restoration, monitoring, and long-term care of those reefs that are damaged. And so those are just a few things in terms of the specific items that we want to be able to discuss. But it's important to note that when we are going to come to this table, that we bring the government's best and brightest. We bring the scientists that can represent the issues, and we can get down into writing strong standards and really articulating what are those standards and how are those policies in place, and how do we back those up by solid reasoning. And this is going to take time, and we have to make sure that we're prepared for it, and that the agencies have some breathing room in the day-to-day minutia of managing what seems like a never-ending crisis. But this is the opportunity that we have, and we need to make sure that we put our best foot forward. And I have confidence in the subject matter experts with AG and EPA and the other agencies that will be able to represent our issues.
Thank you so much for providing those examples, because what you spoke about is incredibly important to know that's going on. It takes a lot of hard work, which is why it's taken so long to develop these, and And across Pacific Islands, it's very common to have our expertise be spread very thin, and therefore it's difficult to manage everything or even plan to be able to manage everything adequately. So it's a real important step that we are hardening those mechanisms, because we are seeing with the increased activity, we absolutely need to have those hardened. We need to have plans, we need to have policies, and we need to have these strategies. So thank you for sharing that. That provides a whole lot of understanding. So if I can, I'll go ahead and start a round of questions, and I'll begin with Senator Therese Terlahi. If you have a question for one of the experts that's testified thus far.
Thank you, Senator. I think this is a very important resolution, and I want to thank you for your work on it and for getting it as factually accurate as possible. And I want to thank all the experts here who have contributed to that. And I just did have one question for Edwin. And Edwin, thank you for your work also. While you are working on the SOP, the Department of Defense continues their activity. Is that correct?
My understanding is that when the record of decision is finalized, then they can proceed with the activities that are covered under that record of decision. Right.
So yeah, I am concerned that the activity continues, and as you've seen, they have announced quite a bit of training, even right now. I think as we speak, that is going on. And so I guess I'm just concerned, how long do you expect, I know you said it's going to take some time, but how long are you expecting before this SOP can become closer to final?
The sooner the better, and I know that this is an important issue for the governor. I know she had some key meetings with very high-level DoD staff, and we had recommended that this be one of the top agenda items. So what I need to do is circle back to the governor's senior advisor in military affairs and my director and see what came out of that meeting with the governor and them.
All right, and then is this something that you at BSP have hired counsel to assist with, or are you relying on counsel at NOAA and the other ones that you discussed earlier?
So for the federal consistency provisions, this is relying on, so the Department of Commerce would be the federal proponent for this. And so they would be the person who would bring the case to DoD. So we're certainly relying on hire and a great network of very experienced folks dealing with federal consistency. And through this process, we had them involved in it as well, in addition to our sister program in the CNMI and also Hawaii, actually.
All right, and so do you have a SOP, for example, in Hawaii or anywhere that as a basis?
Yeah, so there is an SOP or other similar mechanisms that Hawaii and the California mid area have produced. And one thing that I should have noted earlier is that the way that they were able to get that SOP is that they actually had to sue the federal government. And so this is one opportunity, is through this notion of wanting to coordinate and wanting to work together to find those common solutions, that we're able to come up and get this SOP, get approval to begin this SOP right away, as opposed to really dragging this out in court or through the consistency process.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll hold my other questions. Thank you, Edwin.
You're welcome.
Yes, very useful information to hear. Next, Senator Sabina Paris, do you have a question that you'd like to ask?
Yes, thank you, Senator Marsh Taitano. Yeah, I guess this question goes to Edwin and also Brent Tibbetts. So you were talking about, so Edwin, you were talking about the SOPs regarding cumulative and secondary impacts. And a lot of that was focused on more of the toxins. Is there something in the works regarding secondary cumulative effects on marine mammals, which is why we're here today in regards to the resolution?
So from our program's perspective, we would really defer to Brent and his shop on defining what is the specific issues that he wants to see addressed in terms of bioaccumulation or water quality or other kind of ingestion of any kind of toxins. And how do we then present that story in terms of a specific action, and what are our proposed mediation that we want to see for that action?
All right, I'll step in here. Thank you, Edwin, and thank you, Senator, for the question. I think for the resident marine mammals, certainly things such as dolphins, they feed on fish in Guam's waters. So anything that is going to accumulate, they are pretty much the top of the predator. They're the top predator in the ecosystem that they exist in. And so anything that's input into that system accumulates and ends up most at highest levels within those marine mammals. So if there are metals being input into the system or chemicals of some kind, to be able to follow that bioaccumulation, see what the levels are in marine mammals. If we have a marine mammal wash up dead, the ability to test and see if there are toxins in it or something in it that is anthropogenic in origin, and then look at ways to mediate that to reduce that input into the system. For the larger whales, the baleen whales that feed on plankton and small organisms and are not resident around here, there would be probably less of an impact locally with military activities on them. And several of the endangered species are the baleen whales. But we do have sperm whales in the area, which also feed on squid and things, which might also have the ability to be kind of a vector for toxins to accumulate in the food chain and then be ingested by sperm whales as well. So I think one thing that would be appreciated would be the ability to test for toxins in marine mammals that do come up, washed up on the shorelines here, to see if there is some sort of toxicity associated with that stranding, and then look at mitigation or mediation for that, if it can be traced back to something that generated on Guam.
So perhaps something that we can put in the SOP is this rapid response in terms of testing of tissue for any mammals that would wash up on the shore, and to ensure that the mechanisms and the processes are in place, so that we're able to not have to wait for a purchase order to get it done, but we can get it done, and the systems are ready to take that tissue and test it.
Thank you for those responses. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and I'm very glad that the two questions I've really appreciated thus far, and I'm sure I'm going to feel that way about each and every senator's questions. I don't mean to be repetitive, but it's such important information to hear. Senator Regine Bisco-Lee, do you have a question you'd like to pose?
Today, Madam Chair, yes, thank you very much, to the subject matter experts and the stakeholders who have joined us this afternoon. And I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for your leadership, all of our colleagues who are also co-sponsors for this resolution. And I also want to just say to our colleague from the north, to my friend, Congresswoman Sheila Babauta, for joining us. I think, as has been stated, this resolution addresses issues and concerns that are very critical to all of the Marianas. And Madam Chair, I'm not sure if you could help to direct this question. I'm not sure who would be best to answer it, but one of the questions that I had is regarding the US Navy's agreement in the Hawaii and Southern California, I guess, an agreement that was made with Hawaii and Southern California to avoid marine mammals head on, to attempt to maneuver and create some kind of mitigation zone. And so I was wondering if any of the panel members could speak to this agreement in particular, and maybe share with the committee what are some of the main points of this agreement and why it would be so important to have those here in Guam and in the Marianas.
Yes, and again, very excellent because we need to understand what we're asking for. So I think perhaps Edwin would be able to speak to that, but I know that Brent Tibbetts has looked at this as well, at least as far as what makes the most sense for Guam and what we could be asking for. Edwin, would you like to address some of that?
Sure. So I wouldn't know the details of the agreement itself, but I know exactly who to go to get the details of that. That would have been coordinated with the Hawaii Coastal Zone program, and I can easily reach out to John Nakagawa and pull that from them, or even the CZM program in California too. But that's certainly going to be a reference document that we're going to use, and we're going to study and bring that to the table as we come up with the different strategies and standards to ensure that they are reflected in the SOP.
Okay, thank you so much. And Madam Chair, if Brent or Mallory or any of our other stakeholders wanted to chime in here, I'd be open to that.
Yes, and so I just want to point out towards the end as we close, if that's the right time to do it, I'll read the resolved portions of the resolution because I did look at those SOPs as a guideline to pick out what those protections were. And then I also talked to people here to find out what would work for Guam because there are some differences between us and Hawaii and California. And I think for the government of Guam anyway, we were also interested in having a little bit more collaboration and more developing of these critical habitat boundaries because, and I'd like to have Brent Tibbetts speak on this, I believe that because some of the science is so new that the boundaries maybe haven't been formalized yet. Could you speak to that, Brent, and some of those other portions of our resolution if you are familiar with them?
I can address some of it. I'm not 100% familiar, but I will address what I'm comfortable addressing. I know that some of the issues that have been mentioned with Hawaii and Southern California are the types of testing that was happening compared to what will be happening, the amount or the type of detection of marine mammals before testing occurs, excuse me, and then the timing of the testing as well as the location of the testing. There are several aspects that can be modified to minimize impacts on marine mammals. And as Edwin was mentioning, evaluating the Hawaii and the Southern California arrangements would benefit us, although as you rightly mentioned also, we are not exactly the same. We do have some parameters that are kind of unique to the Marianas that should be taken into account. And certainly they would be a good framework to start with. And I think those are four things that would be covered in the agreement, or the type of detection that's being done. How are they looking to see if marine mammals are in the area, where they are, and then the type of testing that's happening, what testing is most likely to affect marine mammals and what may not have as great an effect. And then the timing of it. As we know on Guam, some marine mammals are present year round. Some of them are just migratory and here for a certain amount of time. So there may be some adjustments to the timing of the testing that may minimize impacts to some of our marine mammals as well. So all of those should be looked at and then compared to, again, the types of agreements that have been reached with Hawaii and Southern California to see what fits best for the Marianas.
Thank you so much, Brent. I think, Madam Chair, the point that I really want to drive home, and it's important for all of us to note and remember that these agreements are already in place in Hawaii. These agreements are already in place in Southern California. So it's imperative that we push for this kind of parity, that we ask our partners in the Department of Defense to please, treat our shared resources, if you will, with the same type of respect. And so, I think what Brent was mentioning about the types of testing, the types of detection, the timing, the evaluation of all of these tests are going to be really critical to us moving forward. And we're not, reinventing the wheel here. There are already agreements in place in these other jurisdictions, and we're just asking that our land and our resources be protected in the same way. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Sujasmasi.
And thank you so much for really highlighting that, because that was really important in this resolution, is looking at what existed and asking for the same. And so I really appreciate you making that point. It's asking for what they already do, the testing and training continue, and it's just a small amount of adjustment to protect in these identified areas. And really, it's, in a lot of ways, it's as simple as that. So I appreciate that. Next, we have Senator Will. Did you have a question you would like to pose?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No question. I just want to thank all the participants, again, as was echoed by my colleagues, for your participation and contribution to the discussion. I've worked with many of the professionals here. I find that the resolution is well written. Thank you, Madam Chair, and to your staff, and that the requests stipulated therein are reasonable. Lo mas malago na be na ino un dangklo na Sujasmasi para Kongreso Babalta para no ipatipasyon mo bago. Collaboration, Madam Chair, as you can acknowledge, between the two legislatures can only result in a stronger partnership that can strengthen the community we serve. So thank you for making time and investing your interest in the affairs of your colleagues and your friends, your brothers and sisters here in Guahan. And thank you to BSP and Brett and everybody. Thank you for your participation. I really appreciate the advocacy. My only request, Madam Chair, maybe we can make an overt gesture to my daughter. She was on here. She's a little shy, but she's with Micronesia Conservation Coalition, and so she'll be submitting testimony. And I got to tell you, I wish I could claim credit for her advocacy and love for marine life, but it takes a community to foster that kind of change and behavior. And so thank you to the University of Guam and to those who've touched your life and that generation. God bless you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the privilege to co-sponsor this. Thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for your statements. You know, one of the things that really came clear, I mean, it has at other public hearings, but in listening to our experts here who are part of our government, and then we're going to get to hear from CNMI, which we're so grateful to have this testimony from them, because we do need to be working together in many ways. And this is basically a shared resource that we have. And so it's important that we're working together, but also the other expertise and advocacy here. I'm so appreciative that it exists in our community, but I'm really proud of the experts and what they've been talking about as the years that they've been gathering this data, the years that they've been working to get us to this point, and that the plans for hardening our mechanisms is absolutely key. So I just am really, really proud of the hard work that we're doing at this time. So I also want to give the minority leader an opportunity to ask a question.
Sujasmasi, Madam Chair, for the opportunity and for allowing me to be a sponsor of this resolution. Greatly appreciate it. So buenas, first to Congressman Babalta, buenas and hapade. Thank you for being here too as well, and that collaboration that we're having toward you, and everybody who's here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. I did, you know, another senator brought up a question I had with regards to the Hawaii District Court case 113 and case 114. This is particularly for Hawaii. And I know that it was kind of answered earlier, Edwin, so I know you're gonna do some research on it. I'll be happy to give you those numbers to look at and find out what the mitigation is on this. It's from 2015. When I submitted my comments, I wanted to bring this up. It was very important to me that they follow this. Whatever they're giving Hawaii or any other state, that they provide that same kind of restrictions to Guam as well. So, and Brent, I do have a question as the expert in this field. if the solar, the sonar, I'm sorry, the sonar sound is quieter, does it still affect the mammals? Or is there a level, that protects them, from?
Excuse me. Thank you, Senator. There may be a level, but generally for sonar to be effective, it has to be at a certain volume. Sonar is designed to be sent out and then rebound. And if it's not loud enough, or it just doesn't serve its function. Some mitigation that has been attempted with, I don't know what level of success, is sending out a small, maybe a warning sound before the main sonar sound is emitted, to kind of give marine mammals an advance warning that something is coming, and hopefully that'll discourage them. Some studies have shown though that some marine mammals can get acclimated to sonar sounds and actually become attracted by them. So it may have the opposite of the intended effect. The frequency of the sonar use is something that maybe would be, that seems to be something that is the most damaging, I would say, the marine mammals. Is the frequency that travels the best underwater is also the frequency that the whales are most sensitive at hearing at. So even if the volume is not as high as it might be for some other frequencies, it's right at the frequency that's the whales are most sensitive to. So they are most strongly affected. And I say primarily beaked whales. The mid-range sonar refers to the frequency of the sound waves that are used. Beaked whales are particularly sensitive to that, and so they react. It seems to be almost, regardless of the volume of the sonar that's emitted, but really sonar to be effective has to be at a fairly loud volume, or else it just doesn't do its intended purpose at all.
Yeah, I see. Okay, that marks out everything I read, and try to mitigate, because like you said, this could attract it, a mammal toward the sound, but to have that warning sound that it's going to happen, how well the science behind that, what backs that up is going to be very interesting, to watch and see, and what they're finally going to do on this, how they're going to address this issue. But I thank you everyone for being here, and Madam Chair, the opportunity, and I appreciate again being a part of this resolution.
Seduce Masi, Minority Leader, I know that these sort of issues are something that you are consistently strong on, and so I appreciate that. With building on some of the questions that have been here already, you mentioned, Brent, that detection is one of the ways that we can mitigate, that we can allow the testing and training to happen, but we can mitigate or cause as little damage or harm as possible. So one of the things that I have in the resolution is the role of passive sonar. Can you explain for us this role of passive sonar and how that might be useful, and well, first of all, what it is as opposed to active sonar, and then how that could be helping us in protecting our marine mammals?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I will do my best to answer that. Active sonar is sonar where a noise is put out into the water, and then it bounces off of objects and returns. And then receivers can gather that return signal and tell the distance of an object, the size of an object, maybe some characteristics of what the object is made of, things like that. Passive sonar is virtually just putting a microphone in the water and gathering sounds that are being generated underwater already. They may not be able to tell you the size of an object or the make of an object, but they can tell you what objects are there. Whales in particular, each species of whale seem to have a unique song or series of sounds that they make, and they are well cataloged. You can put an underwater microphone out and collect sounds of marine mammals, and you can match them with an existing catalog and tell what species are found. I think right now, currently, detection before these activities just involves a visual survey, looking for marine mammals at the surface, which might get a few, but most marine mammals spend most of their life underwater, and they come up maybe to breathe or to rest for a bit, but then they go underwater again. And particularly the beaked whales, they come up for just a few minutes, and then they will spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours underwater before coming up again. So the odds of catching them with a visual survey are pretty remote. But they are making sounds while they're underwater. So, and some sort of acoustic device to detect sounds being emitted by these whales would probably increase greatly, I suspect, the detection rate of whales, because you're getting them when they're spending most of their time underwater. And the technology, if you will, of hydrophones underwater are such that now you can tell what direction whale sounds are coming from. There's not just detection, but you can also locate the direction that the sounds are coming from. And one thing I think would be beneficial is to use that as part of any detection before any exercises go on. That would give us a much better feeling for what marine mammals are in the area.
And is it visual? Is it visual? Just visual observations? Is that the method they're using right now to try to detect if there are marine mammals around?
Yeah, there will be staff dedicated on the deck of a boat for a certain amount of time. Off the top of my head, I don't know the length of time for visual surveys before activities go in, but they do currently. That is the method of detection that's used.
Yeah, so it seems to me that it would make a significant amount of difference that they could be heard. The visualization is not working terribly well. Yeah, it also seems, without my being from that field, it also seems like it is less of an issue than this burst of noise being emitted that you've talked about as being problematic. So did people have another question? I mean, they can continue to be here, or are we ready to hear from others? Senator Therese, did you want to ask another question before we move on?
No, I'm good. I just remembered from prior hearings that we've had on this on the MIT that that was the testimony even from the Department of Defense that it was a visual survey, and then we found that for sonar, for the detonation, we could get more materials or more reporting from their actual activity, but for the sonar activity, we were at that time unable to get any information. They kept saying it was classified, a very protected type of information. So I'm really hoping that Edwin and everybody working together is going to be able to achieve what they're working for. Thank you.
Right, for increased communication, because I believe that that's been some of an issue. As I was doing my reading, there was that discussion of as far as I know, the government of Guam doesn't even know all the times that active sonar is being used. And that's real problematic for us to not even be informed before, during, or even after if active sonar has indeed been used. That's my understanding. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. And so I think the more increased communication that's been discussed, as you point out, Senator Therese, the better it's going to be for our government, for sure. And Senator Perez, did you have a question before I open up to more testimony?
Yes, thank you, Senator Martinez. You know, one of the most interesting things, one of the research that came out recently was the breeding grounds in the Mariana Islands. And, you know, it's my hope that when we develop these SOPs that, you know, perhaps we can do a moratorium on testing during the breeding season, during this very vulnerable and critical time. And so, yeah, just maybe this question is to Bren and perhaps also to Congresswoman Babauta. You know, what are some of the, you know, measures, perhaps this can go to Congresswoman Babauta. You know, what are some of the efforts that you've been engaged with in bringing this to light into the international scene and into the national scene as far as protection of these breeding sites for whales, the humpback whales especially, that are critically endangered.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Here in the Marianas, I have introduced, with the help of a nonprofit organization, House Joint Resolution 21-8, which does fall in line with protecting our environment and calling on the governor to really oppose any increase in destructive military activities in our waters, our land, our air spaces. And so we have started there. We have held public hearings on every island, and the Committee for Federal and Foreign Affairs is finalizing the report on that for the House. In regards to bringing this to national attention, we are looking to, and we have plans to meet with our U.S. delegate, Kilili Sablon, for his support and his advocacy on the Hill. We have also partnered through our Commonwealth 670. We have really expanded our reach to Okinawa, Hawaii, Guam, Marshall Islands. I mean, the topic of militarization is global, and the destruction that I've learned about really in just the last year. I think that's why I feel so passionate about it, is because I was born and raised here in the CNMI, and I only found out about all this last year. It's a very sensitive topic to really talk about, because we are a very patriotic community. We heavily rely on the military's presence here, and we're trying to really bring the conversation to light and provide safe spaces where we can really talk about it in a way that is beneficial for both parties, right? So right now, that is where we are. We are just so honored and humbled by the support that our community, our very small community here, has been getting from our international partners, World Beyond War, Okinawan groups, and Hawaii, and even on the mainland. And so it's a lot of work. And we are always reaching out to advisors and those who have been working on this here in the Marianas for years, for decades. They've been fighting for the protection of our northern islands, and so they're very happy to see that the work is continuing, and so I'm just here. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be a part of this space and learn about the sonar activities that are proposed for our waters. The record of decision was signed by the Department of the Navy on July 29th, and that's something that's not really being discussed. It is urgent. That is why it's urgent, because even during this health pandemic, the military is still moving along, moving forward with their plans, and it's so important for us to stay informed. And even that is difficult to do because there's thousands of pages and jargon to understand. So I'm very thankful to our experts who have joined us today. I've learned so much, and I look forward to this partnership.
To do this, Masi, likewise, and we're looking forward to growing this movement, hopefully. So the one of the articles that I read was very interesting about the breeding grounds of the humpback whales, and this is a critically endangered humpback whale. And what's very unique about the one that breeds here in the Mariana Islands is they feed specifically in one location. So in a way, they're kind of like specialists. And they come back. So, and they follow, the way they follow this was through the mother's DNA. It's the mitochondrial DNA, which is matrilineal, which is kind of unique. It's fitting because we're a matrilineal culture, and we're following the matrilineal lineage of whales, which happen to be very specialists. Sorry, that's the right term. So that's what I think is really unique about this particular population, and that's why we have to protect this. This breeding ground is the time when they're breeding and migrating back up to Arctic waters for feeding. So yeah, that's why I really support this resolution, because it highlights the uniqueness of our islands, the habitat. You know, just like we were fighting for, you know, the endangered species on our lands. It's equally important to fight for these endangered species and habitats in our oceans as well. And you know, as we all know, that the Marianas are a biodiversity hotspot, which means there is a high risk of extinction of unique species. And so yeah, I definitely look forward to working with all of you to protect what is unique to our islands. So to do as Masi.
Very
Madam
good.
Chair, can I
And
comment about that?
yes, Edwin,
So,
did you have something to add?
Yeah, so thank you, Senator, for that kind of background on the data that shows the breeding patterns for the humpback whales. And what I can say is that while I'm not aware of specific language that would outline when an activity can and cannot occur that would ensure that they do not disturb that particular breeding pattern, I know that in other areas under the essential fish habitat that we were successful in putting in strong language that prohibits activities when corals are spawning. So the same concept here is that if we're successful to restrict an activity that would affect a specific breeding or reproduction, a critical reproduction cycle for the corals, I'm sure that we should be able to get that for the whales as well.
Well, and that's very good to hear. Yes. Yes, I think we need all the encouragement we can get because, as you've mentioned, there are objections in place. The record of decision did talk about looking at and acquiescing that, at least acknowledging that it did offer these protections in Hawaii and California. And yet here we are. And so this is where it comes down to leadership. And that's why I'm so grateful across the waters, across our community, and across the different parties. We're doing the right thing for our community by standing up and saying we deserve no less. Senator Tello, did you have any question before we open the floor up to the other testimonies? Okay, good. So I'll next move on, if that's all right, to Dr. Allen, who's here representing Taladza, Micronesia. Thank you for your patience through this. I know these hearings take a while sometimes, and we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you. I could listen for a long time. And Brent Tibbetts, I could listen. I'm learning so much tonight about whales and the sonar. Oh my gosh, I would love to listen to more of, I just love learning. But for tonight, so I appreciate and I thank you for allowing me to come and to speak. My thing is mainly really to speak on behalf of, in particular, my granddaughter, Isabella, who was born on Guam 9 years ago, and the other children, and even those who have not been born yet. And I really, for me, that is so important. I don't know if it's maybe because the older one gets, you really start to see the generations coming along. So my name is Deborah Ellen, Dr. Deborah Ellen, and I am speaking on behalf of my granddaughter, Isabella, as well as for those who are even not yet born, and as well as for Taladza, Micronesia, with our focus on sustainability. I'd just like to read a few little things. I won't take too much time because I know our time is limited here as well. Eco-philosopher Joanna Macy, I don't know if you've heard of her. She writes in a book that she has. It's called Active Hope, How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy. She writes, future generations will look back at the time we are living in now. The kind of future they look from and the story they tell about our period will be shaped by the choices that we make in our lifetime. The decisions we make today will ultimately affect the kind of world which future generations inherit, as well as the quality of our own lives right now. You know, yesterday I was listening to the podcast, and there was the interview with Senator Kelly Marsh, and she was talking about the many different types of dolphins and whales which live within our island waters. And she indicated that she had not known about the diversity of all these beings. And the interviewer, Lawrence Lizama, also indicated that he had not known about so many of the whales and the species, the different types of whales and dolphins that live here. I didn't know either. I was fully unaware of that. And I'm sure that most of the people here on Guam don't know. And I'm also pretty sure that the children that are growing up on Guam do not know much about dolphins and whales in general, or about all the different types of sea cucumbers that we have, the many types of starfish, spadefish, butterfly fish, angelfish, pufferfish, and that's just to name a few. We have such diversity in our ocean waters. And the reason that they don't know is because we don't really teach them about these things that are in our own backyards or in our ocean waters. And so we don't know about what is living within 50 yards or 50 feet of our beaches. So those creatures are kind of on the outside of our radar, and as if they don't even exist. And so we don't even think about their role in the ocean waters, which supports our very island and our planet itself. So as educators, and I'm a longtime educator, we can and we should be doing something about that. So yes, we can start to do something about teaching our children about what lies around them and helping them to have a sense of connection to all of our plant and animal fellow creatures that surround us. My concern is that it is the adults, yourselves and myself, and we are the ones that are really responsible for the long-term vitality of our island and the oceans that are part of our community. It is we, the adults, that should be doing all that we can to ensure that those who are born in, say, 10 years, 20 years, 50, 100, 200 years, what do we want our island and our waters to look like? We want them to be able to swim in the water with the same creatures that we are able to, so blessed to be able to swim in these waters and experience, you know, being surrounded by the fish that we are. Should they have any less? Should they deserve less? Do they? No. So, you know, there's this awesome image I wish I could show you, and maybe you've seen it before, that which depicts the two philosophies about existence, our existence. We have what's called the ego system and the ecosystem. You may have seen this. The image of the ego system shows man at the top of a pyramid with everything underneath of it for his control, his use. The ecosystem shows man within this circle, connected with everything. We are but one part of it. And that's something that really, I think we need to really share with our children, and it's something that's very important. While we humans may think that we are above all the creatures and often treat other creatures in an inhumane way, we are just one creature within that system. We would not be here if it were not for all of our other plants and animals that are part of this system with us. We have the ability to greatly impact the opportunity for the other creatures to live and thrive, but we also have a responsibility for making sure that we help to protect them. By protecting them, we protect ourselves and our children that are even yet to be born. Joanna Macy says she has another quote. She said, "Our personal well-being depends on the well-being of the natural world around us." And Chief Seattle, going back farther, he says, "This we know, the earth does not belong to man, man belongs to the earth. All things are connected, like the blood that unites us all. Man did not weave the web of life, he is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the earth, he does to himself." So that's kind of my perspective as an educator, as a grandmother, as a person, a part of this community, is really to speak on behalf of the children right now. And I hope to hear Senator Will Castro's daughter, if she is able to speak, because a lot of our children and the ones that are not born yet don't have a voice. So I wish to speak on behalf of them and fully support Resolution 36535, the Protehima, and I'm not going to say it right, let their voices count. By protecting our waters, our dolphins, and our whales, we are protecting the life and vitality of our ocean creatures, which thus protects us, protecting the well-being of those who are even yet to be born. Jesus Maasi. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on behalf of them.
Jesus Maasi for providing that perspective, and it's such an important one. And I think as leaders, the same as in the CNMI as is true here, that as leaders, we're here for the success and well-being of our people today, but it also has to be, it can't be at the expense of everybody in the future. It has to be that we're setting ourselves up in the long term for success that is not sacrificed and is preserved for the future in the multitude of ways. And this is part of what I'm really appreciative of all the leaders that are here and that are co-sponsors. So thank you very much for making that very clear. And let's also hear next from Congresswoman Sheila Babauta. I believe you're also representing a group, and I love these very clever ways of dissecting a name where it's our common wealth. For me, it's so apropos, like it's accurate, it's right on. So if you could provide your testimony, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hafade and Tiro, members of this honorable body, I'm here today to state my strong support for Resolution 365-35LS and gratitude for your work and passion for environmental protection. My name is Sheila Jack Babauta, Congresswoman for Precinct 4 in the 21st CNMI House of Representatives. As a sister leader in the Marianas, I'm here to stand with you. Our livelihood is tied to our oceans and marine ecosystems. Our surrounding waters is a part of our homelands. The rich natural resources for the indigenous peoples, Chamorros and Carolinians, all who visit or call this place home, is essential to our quality of life. The science is clear. There is significant degradation of our environment on our precious lands and in our beautiful waters, largely due to militarization and development in our Marianas. However, the present is our responsibility. It is our responsibility to protect and preserve what limited and beautiful resources we have been blessed with. It is our responsibility to ensure our skies remain blue, our waters remain safe, and our lands remain inviting, not just for ourselves, but for our elders who survived the war, who deserve to see our Marianas progress, and for our children who deserve a healthy place to prosper and raise their families. Over the years, we've built strong ties with the United States military. Our servicemen and women fight for our country, serve in the United States military, and we, the families, stand proudly beside them in support of their efforts. Now we are calling on our local leaders and the US military to help us protect our precious lands and waters. I'm here to join you in urging the US Navy to cease its use of active sonar activity that harms marine mammals in identified habitats. We are interconnected. What impacts Guam affects the CNMI, and what impacts the CNMI affects Guam. We are one island chain. We are one Marianas. I thank you so much for allowing me to testify as your ally, and I look forward to the passage of Resolution 365-35. Situs Masi. Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, I also serve as a board member on our Commonwealth 670, and they would like for me to read our letter of support.
Please do, Situs Masi.
Thank you. Hafade and Tiro, Senator Marsh Kelly, Taitano. Because we value our right as the people of the Mariana Islands to preserve and protect our economy, health, and natural environment, it is with respect and appreciation that we send this letter in support of Guam Legislature Resolution number 365-35LS. We want to reiterate our Commonwealth 670's opposition to any activity that threatens to cause undue stress or damage to the living beings that make up our local ecosystems, particularly when those activities threaten to cause irreparable harm to endangered marine species that play a key role in maintaining the balance of those ecosystems, such as the humpback whale. As GL Resolution number 365-35 makes clear, the U.S. Department of the Navy's use of active sonar in the waters surrounding the Marianas constitutes such a threat because active sonar testing conducted by the U.S. Department of Navy can lead to strong, potentially lethal effects such as strandings, as well as a range of behavioral responses scaling from low to high severity. There have been more whale stranding events on Guam and Saipan in the past 15 years than in the 4 decades prior. Scientists have found that on Guam and Saipan, there has been a strong association between beaked whale stranding events and the presence of multinational naval ASW, anti-submarine warfare, training operations. And several strandings have occurred during or within a week of naval activities. Others may have occurred during unreported naval activities. As advocates for the preservation of the Marianas cultures and natural resources for future generations, we agree with resolution number 36535's call for the Department of the Navy to minimize or eliminate sonar testing that inadvertently harms whales, dolphins, and other marine mammals. We also support the resolution's request that the Navy provide all information as declared necessary by the government of Guam regarding injuries or deaths to marine mammals caused by U.S. military action. We too are U.S. citizens that deserve as much of a viable livelihood and safe food supply as the rest of our fellow citizens. We simply wish to enjoy the same degree of peace and well-being that is the U.S. Si Zeus Masi and Olumwai.
Sejus Maasi for providing that, and Olumwai for providing that. You know, as you highlighted, it's a multitude of concerns. It's the sustenance from the ocean. It's the livelihoods that are gained from the ocean as well. And I know in some of the time that I've spent up there, there's also some sacredness to parts of the ocean by the people in the CNMI. So, I mean, there's a whole multitude of elements to be considering here. And we also have Kyle Dahalik, who is here presenting on behalf of the Guam Youth Climate Strike, and we thank the organization very much and Kyle for being here to provide testimony. So just Masi, Kyle, and if you can unmute yourself, yes, and start with your name and your organization and to begin.
Minagov Puengi, members of the committee, and to all of you who are listening. Inaanhu si Kyle Dahilig. I serve as a member of the Guam Youth Climate Strike, and we believe that a future worth living in means actively participating in the decisions made today. I want you to know that the youth is here. The youth is listening, and we are not playing around. Resolution 365-35 is about protecting biodiversity. And although we support the resolution, we seek to amend it by proposing to remove lines 12-23 on page 2. We cannot turn a blind eye and say no to sonar, but yes to exploiting more of our waters for development. The best course of action for our free whales and dolphins is to leave them alone. We propose that all areas considered homes for our marine mammals to be safeguarded as marine protected areas, or MPAs. Sometimes it's better to know the questions than all of the answers. And I wish that, I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm disconnecting. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can still hear you. You've been consistent, so you're good.
We believe that the best course of action for our free whales and dolphins is to leave them alone. And sometimes it's better to know the questions than all of the answers. And I wish I could go back to a month ago where I didn't know that Guam and our sister Mariana Islands are romantic getaways for our global marine mammals. I would rather not know how much our dolphin watching attractions make or the monetary value a humpback whale birth can generate. Because to me, it's priceless. And nature is better when nature can be natural and not exploited for profiteering. And at the end of the day, We're just asking for the same right to biodiversity that you grew up with so that we can enjoy and our sisters and brothers. Andang ko na si Jesus Masi, maraming salamat po, and kiniso.
Sijus Maasi for that testimony, and we will be looking at all the recommendations. There was another testimony that we received that also had a couple of recommendations. And so that's what this process is about. It's to hear from the community, work with recommendations, and then adjust that at the committee level to the final result. So Sijus Maasi for the thoughtfulness and the importance of hearing from our youth. As has been mentioned here, but I know is also a strong stance of the Guam Youth Climate Strike, that this is the earth, this is the island, these are the waters that you inherit. And we are here to work together to safeguard them, not just for now, as I mentioned, but for the future. And we need to do that with you all in mind. And with you guys being active participants, that only makes the whole process that much better and more accurate to what it is you guys need out of all of this, or what your expectations are. So I appreciate those. And I'm not sure if, I know Jesse Chargaloff was here, but I don't see him right now. He might be coming back on to provide his testimony. But do we have questions by the senators that are still here? So for Senator Therese, did you have a question of anybody in the panel now, since we've all participated thus far?
Thank you. I want to thank both of you for your testimony, Sijus Masi and Congressman Babauta. Please keep up the good work. We're very proud to have partners in the CNMI to protect our oceans. And you are right that people have been really standing up for this for years, and we owe it to them and to our future generations to do the same. At the very least, what we should even try to do more. So I stand with you as well, and with all our earlier professionals who testified that, and we stand with all our future generations in protecting our resources, really, and protecting these for what we know about them today and for what we will discover about them in the future. And that's why I really believe that it is the correct thing to do. And it is a very reasonable thing to do. It with the vast ocean that they have reserved for their MIT training, the largest one in the world, really is, there's really no reasonable reason that they could not exclude these areas, and in particular during the very sensitive times. So Sijus Masi, again, for your, for all of your testimony, Sijus Masi.
I really appreciate the way that you said that, Senadora. There's no reasonable reason, really. And that's one of the things that has been coming across my mind as well in writing this resolution and talking to people, senators like yourself, and looking at the record of decision and the different steps to this process. Really, there is no reasonable reason to not apply what they are doing elsewhere here for so many important reasons. So thank you for that statement. And I do see, if people don't mind, I do see that Joni Kerr has been able to join us, and Jesse Chargaloff. So if I could have Joni Kerr, who is here representing, she's an associate professor at the Guam Community College and also advisor to the Eco Warriors. If you're able to make yourself visible, Joni, and to provide us your testimony. Yeah.
Hi, half a day. I'm so sorry I'm late, but I was in another meeting. I'll make it short. I don't know what everybody said, but I am representing the GCC community, the GCC Eco Warriors. We are a student and community organization that strives to learn about and protect Guam's natural resources. to protecting we have from the devastating and potentially deadly consequences of active sonar. The Eco Warriors recognize the importance of protecting cetaceans. We want to emphasize the importance of them because of saving as many whales as possible to allow them to recover their mighty ecological ability to affect the climate, influence fish populations, and simply be the iconic marine animals that many people enjoy watching and sharing the planet with. So I do have much more to say, but I know time is running out. So I will submit my written testimony, but I wanted to say something for the Eco Warriors. Thank you very much.
Yes, Sidus Masi for that. And thank you for your continued role. I know that you've been an advisor for the Eco Warriors for quite some time, and it serves a really important function in our community. So I really appreciate that. And they go out there and they're part of the solution, I feel, for a lot of the issues that we're facing. So that's extremely, extremely important. And we also have Jesse Chargaloff. If you could provide, make yourself visible if you're able to, and provide your testimony as well. You are representing Independent Guahan, I believe.
Yes. Yes. Hafaday members of the 35th Legislature of Guam. My name is Jesse Chargaloff, and today I'm speaking on behalf of myself and the nonprofit organization Independent Guahan. I have a brief testimonial trying to make a point a little different than most have been spoken so far, but it is most definitely in support of Resolution 365-35 relative to protecting our marine mammals and urging the U.S. Navy to cease the use of active sonar in the Mariana Island testing and training zone. We applaud Senators Marsh Taitano, Terlahi, Perez, Nelson, Rigel, San Augustine, Lee, Castro, and Taitagui for their steadfast position in protecting our natural resources and the lives dependent on them. Whether it be life in the sea or life on the land, one cannot live their best life on this island without the other. Resolutions such as this are integral to etching into the consciousness of our people the importance of Putehi and Defendi in regards to the need of sustainability in our special place in the world. Our lives go hand in hand with the flora and the fauna of the sea and of this land, but consciousness of sustainability has been lacking in most of us for a long time. And in these pandemic times, it is important more than ever that our leaders, such as yourselves, push these ideas into the minds of our people so we may begin to realize what it takes to live sustainability and what it will take to live through the hard times, such as we are trying to do now. It has been the position of many that there is nothing we can do in regards to the military action in our part of the world, but this is not the final truth of our circumstances. We always have a voice and must always use it, and it is of great responsibility that the voices of our leaders amplify that voice against any harm in our path. No matter the sense of helplessness we might feel at any given point in history, helplessness is not the truth of us. Every elected official, every elected senatorial and gubernatorial official on this island has affirmed their duty to support the decolonization of our homeland, and this resolution and all others like it are part of that responsibility and pledge. And I applaud again Dr. Marsh Taitano and her colleagues for introducing this resolution, bringing us a step closer to fulfilling the responsibility that they have promised. And to conclude, incidentally, today is the anniversary of an event that happened on September the 11th in the year 1671, when Magalahi Hurrah proclaimed to 2,000 people that we are stronger than we think. And this is the same kind of proclamation that this resolution makes today. So, Biba Hamzu, thank you.
That was a very powerful testimony, and I had no idea when you said September 11th, I thought you were going in a different direction. So thank you for sharing that, because I did not know that this day is auspicious in that way. And it's important for us to remember or to learn these things about ourselves. As was mentioned, I believe it was by Dr. Ellen, we don't know enough about ourselves. And I think each one of us here absolutely knows that. As Congresswoman Sheila Babauta mentioned as well, we grew up here, and yet our native species, understanding what it takes to be sustainable and what that even means, we haven't learned those things, and we're just learning them now. And so it's so important that we're here working together to help each other learn these elements and to spread that knowledge with the others and those principles. So Sejus Masi for everybody who has shared some of those elements. I believe maybe Senator Teresa's had to leave, but we've heard from all the people that are here, I believe, that are testifying today. So I'll continue with the round of questions. Senator Harris, did you have another question?
Sejus Masi, Madam Chair. I have no further questions, but I just want to thank you for creating this resolution and providing this opportunity to bring together community to support and protect what's very special to us and sacred to us. And I just want to thank everyone here who has provided testimony to Sejus Masi, to all of you, and looking forward to working with you in the very near future. Thank you very much.
Yes, and Edwin Rages, the administrator for the Coastal Management Program, he apologizes that he has to leave, but he very much appreciates the resolution and this hearing, and it's going to be part of what is going to help him in his efforts, and it's part of what helps us in the legislature in our efforts. And again, it really should be this way. Each branch of the government, leadership at different levels, all working together for some of this common good. Sorry, I've got my dog back here. Minority Leader, do you have a further question?
No questions, just a comment to say thank you everybody for being there, being vigilant, especially CNMI for being here tonight, and Congresswoman Babauta, Sejus Masi, and Jesse, well said as well. Everybody who is here testifying today, it really means a lot. And I'm hoping to get this out as soon as possible, Madam Chair, and send this off, because we definitely need to keep our voices loud and clear. Thank you.
I agree. Very well said, Sejus Masi, for that. I do have a couple of questions, and then I'll read, as I mentioned, the resolved clauses so that people understand what we're asking for. And as Senator Therese and others have pointed out, this exists elsewhere. It's very reasonable. Testing and training still goes on, and so forth. And so I just cannot see why we should deserve any less consideration than other areas. One of my questions is, I mentioned that we've received quite a bit of testimony. We've received quite a bit of people that have signed up on a petition in just a few days. And so that really says a lot about how important this is to our community. And part of the testimony is from at least one boat tour operator, and we're still continuing to reach out to more because we know that they have concerns here for a variety of reasons, for livelihood, and probably because they are boat tour operators offering these sort of tours because they appreciate our marine life as well and understand that aspect of it. But the other is that I have had some discussion with Tatasi, or our traditional seafarers. And one of the things that we've been interested in is Imanata, like ancient Chamorros and Refalawash, the Carolinians who came here early on before they even settled here. They had to have had these encounters with the whales and dolphins and this whole variety of marine life. I've heard stories about jellyfish in certain areas and other points of reference that they have. And so they did mention that when they go out into the open sea as traditional seafarers, they do indeed have encounters with whales. And so those must have been part of our history for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And if we can recapture understanding some of that, the better. And so that is maybe some of what we can get from NMI as well, from both the Refalawash population as well as the Chamorro population up there. some of their modern encounters, but maybe some of the older encounters that have been passed on through time. So for Mallory, I don't know in the work that you've been doing related to this and other things for this work that you're doing in developing a recreation, like a safe recreational plan for our reefs and some of the other work that you do. Do you ever or have you reached out to our traditional seafarers in some of these regards? And if not, I encourage you to, because they do have stories and encounters to share.
Yes, actually, I have come and participated in my workshops that I did last year for marine tour operators. And what I'm trying to do is ensure that this kind of information about the marine life and conservation is passed on during these tours. So I appreciate Kyle's comments that while, you know, we don't want to think only of this marine life as an asset financially, but it is also a great mechanism to be able to share this information with the wider public and people that don't live on the ocean or on a beautiful island. So yes, I do appreciate any cultural information that we can share, and hoping to get that information and pass it on to the marine tour operators so they can also share it with our visitors.
And thank you for sharing that perspective. You know, we did focus on certain things as we were putting this together and framing it, but that's something that probably gets lost in the conversation sometimes, that by being a tourist destination, it isn't all about being a shopping destination or these other things. I mean, they are coming here for real encounters. They may get a variety of experiences, but what they really want when they come here is to meet people, to hear stories, at least some of them, and to have some authentic cultural and natural experiences. And so that's something to keep in mind. I think that part of the goal is to keep these environments and these populations successful in as natural a way as possible and as little disturbed as possible, so that they can continue to be part of our system, but they can be continue to be part of what is authentic about us and continues to be for generations. So yeah, each person's testimony has really, I think, helped develop a fuller picture that no single one person or entity would have all by themselves. Another question that I had was, we did touch on the effects of sonar. So if I could ask Brent Tibbetts, can you explain to us the different types of reactions? So we know that beaked whales in particular are very sensitive. In my reading, it said that for decades and decades and decades, there were different sightings that were being documented, but there were absolutely no beaked whales that were washing up dead on our shores. But it was only after, I believe, active sonar and maybe more modern lifestyles that we started seeing this happen more regularly. But could you tell us what some of the different responses are to sonar? Whether it affects their feeding, whether it disorientates them, whether it's actually painful for them. If you could speak to some of that.
Thank you, Senator. For what I've been able to read is that the impacts that sonar has are, it can, as we mentioned earlier, it's a very loud noise underwater, can just startle marine mammals and cause them to move away from feeding areas or resting areas. But also it can startle marine mammals so that they rise to the surface too quickly. And they actually do end up with the bends, the gas bubbles forming in their bloodstream. And the bends, my understanding is when people get them, are very painful. They get, it's called the bends because people kind of huddle up because it's so painful to move. I don't know of a reason to think why it wouldn't be as painful for marine mammals as well. Plus, if a very loud sounds can damage our hearing, very loud sounds underwater can damage the hearing of marine mammals. And as our ears are involved very much with our sense of balance and orientation, the same thing with marine mammals. And if you damage the structures in their ear that assist them with balance, then they can be disoriented and lose their way, and again come to the surface too quickly, or get lost on somewhere underwater where they weren't planning to be going. Those are probably the main physiological and physical effects. Are the actual can damage the ear bones, as well as damage the structures in the ear that are involved with both hearing and with balance. And then just the startle effect from a loud sound suddenly can cause them to rush to the surface more quickly than they should. And it has been found whales have had gas bubbles form in the bloodstream from coming to the surface too quickly.
Yes, that's all really important for us to understand as much as possible. And if I could build on that a little bit, so I don't know a whole lot about echolocation and how their different senses work very well, but when you're talking about, and that was something that I just learned, you're mentioning like permanent damage to their ears. Is that part of what they use in this echolocation? Does it also damage their ability to echolocate, or is that different senses? I'm just not quite sure.
No, that is the sense that they use. They create sound with generally with an organ in their head, but they receive it with their ears. Oh. And so damage to the ears would affect their ability to use echolocation. One thing, baleen whales do not use echolocation, but toothed whales do. So beaked whales, dolphins, sperm whales, things like that, all use echolocation. And so something that damages the ears of those animals can affect their ability to find food or find each other or orient their way around underwater.
Yeah, and considering especially for the migratory ones where they swim, it looks like thousands of miles, that's a real issue. And I remember in some of the reading I was doing that it doesn't just disrupt their behavior immediately, that they may not feed well for a long period of time afterward. And I mean, it just is incredibly disruptive. And the other thing, and again, please add more information or correct me if I'm wrong, but it was saying that just because we see strandings on the beach, that doesn't mean that that's all the whales that are affected, that there may be some that get disoriented and maybe perish out there in the waters, and we just don't even know the numbers that are being affected. Is that the case where we just really don't even know the numbers that are being affected right now and how many might be affected to the point that they actually die from this?
That is correct. We get reports from people in boats of coming on a whale carcass floating out at sea. The cause of death is unknown and the species frequently is unknown, but it absolutely is the case where whales do die at sea and never come to shore, and we don't know about them at all. And maybe an incidental sighting from somebody in a boat, but I'm sure many whales perish without any means of detection for us at all. We just, for the most part, whale strandings that we discuss are just whales that have stranded on the beaches of Guam or have been seen close to shore on Guam. That certainly is nowhere near all of the whales around Guam or all the whales that perish around Guam.
Thank you for making that more clear, because that's a real important point. I think it's disturbing and distressing to much of the community every time we have one of the whales that does end up dead on our beaches. But as often as that occurs, that it's certainly not the whole picture, that we really don't even understand how large of an impact this is having. And that's something definitely to take into consideration, that this is already having an unknown impact. And if we can, as Edwin was saying, the sooner the better, the sooner the better that we can mitigate some of this and minimize it or end it ideally, the better for our entire ecosystem, because we don't know all the impacts that will happen because of this new imbalance that humankind is creating that's going to affect us at all levels. So I wanted to read here, unless others still wanted to have some comments or questions, but the resolved clauses. So as was mentioned earlier, and I thank Senator Lee for making it very clear, that we looked at the SOPs, those standard operating procedures that the Navy does follow for Hawaii and California. And we picked the ones that were applicable to Guam. And so really some of it is just as simple as, let me read this out. So be it resolved that we call upon the US Navy to, as the US Navy has agreed to do in the Hawaii, Southern California Training and Testing Study Area, avoid approaching marine mammals head on and shall maneuver to maintain a 500-yard mitigation zone for observed whales and a 200-yard mitigation zone for all other observed marine mammals. Except for bow riding dolphins. They are attracted to ships, so that would be an impossible situation. But again, this is something that they are absolutely doing for Hawaii and Southern California in their testing and training study area. Then also be it resolved that we call upon the US Navy, as the US Navy also has agreed to do in the Hawaii, Southern California testing and training, the training and testing study area, in areas identified by the government as Guam as habitat for beaked whales and other cetaceans. So again, following their lead as to what is already going on. And we've talked a lot about active sonar, but also as part of this is to not have the conduct of other training. And again, this is all agreed to already, to not conduct other training that inadvertently harms whales, dolphins, and other marine mammals, such as the use of in-water explosives for training and testing activities. So that is something we are also calling for. We are also calling upon them, as we've talked about, to have a better system rather than just the visual surveying or the visual lookout, which is not very effective, to carry out the passive sonar. And the passive sonar is very simple. It's just simply dropping that microphone into the water, listening for their presence, and then behaving as has already been stated, that while they know that these mammals are in place, to not be having the active sonar or the underwater explosives. And then the other one is more of that collaboration and that communication that Edwin Regis was talking about. That while we are recognizing that whale species demonstrate a seasonal abundance and a spatial variability around Guam, we call upon the US Navy during those times and in those areas determined by the government of Guam, so working together, in which marine mammals can be expected to minimize or eliminate sonar testing and the conduct of that other harmful activity, but also for us to be sharing information, to provide all information as declared necessary by the government of Guam on behalf of the people of Guam, so that the government of Guam is adequately equipped to review the actions that may have led to injuries or deaths, and further, depending upon the government of Guam's findings, to work closely, both of us together, to adjust the boundaries of habitat areas of the beaked whales and other cetaceans. So again, very much in line with what the governor is doing and coastal management and in the work that they're trying to promote, it's having that collaboration between us, that together we are identifying these boundaries, and if the boundaries need to be adjusted, we are recognizing it together and in this protection together. So after this, it's also resolved that we send this resolution and it goes out to a wide variety, both of our congressional delegates for CNMI and for Guam, and then to various members of Congress who have committees that oversee the military or other elements that are related, to send it to the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Navy and the Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Interior, the Rear Admiral, the Commander of the U.S. Naval Forces Marianas, and other related peoples and organizations, so that we are reaching out in a wide range to have this collaboration and this working together for the good of everybody, which should be everybody's goal, I would imagine. So, we're all calling upon anyway. So with that, that's kind of how I was wanting to wrap it up, is to thank everybody for participating across the waters, across the different social distancing right now, and across the organizations in the community here, and across the different levels of leadership. Is there, I guess Senator Sabina is still here. Senator Sabina, did you have any closing statements that you wanted to give?
I'm good. Again, thank you everybody for your support, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, and I definitely appreciate everybody taking time on a Friday evening. I mean, it's that after the end of a work day, to come here and provide testimony, for either sharing your expertise, for doing what you feel is the right thing for the government of Guam to do in protecting its community and its community's resources, including our marine environments that are shared across our boundaries in the archipelago. So with this, let me go ahead and start closing, unless Congressman Sheila, is there any question you wanted to ask of the people who have testified, or any closing statement you would like to give?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. I'm just so humbled and grateful to be here with you tonight. I thank you for bringing everyone together, for reaching across the ocean and inviting me into this space. I do not have any questions, and I really look forward to the passage of the resolution 365-35. I am here, I'm an ally. We here in the CNMI want to work with you, with your government, with Guam, and so please reach out to me anytime. And thank you again.
And I hope that there's a like organization to the Guam Youth Climate Strike, that there is one in CNMI, and if not, that might be something that could happen, is this increased collaboration from government agencies, and also for some of our groups that are very committed to the things that we've talked about today. For Jesse, just right before we close, I know that you have learned some traditional seafaring in the classes that you've taken, or your conversations with traditional seafarers. Have you had an opportunity to talk about our marine mammals out there, or anything you'd like to share on that behalf?
Yes, I guess for marine mammals, I guess like the migration routes are used a lot in traditional seafaring, and I just want to talk about, like, in general, traditional seafaring is kind of like a rehabilitation from the daily lives we live in. That's what I took most out of that class when taking it, and something really important, refamiliarizing ourselves with the land and the sea. So that's it.
Yeah, and that's a very important activity. I think it's some of what many of us have talked about, that it's a shame in many ways to have grown up here or to be from here, and yet we have a long way to go in our educational systems and some of the work that all of us do in helping our entire community be more connected and understand ourselves. Really, at the end of it, that's what we're doing, is understanding ourselves by understanding what is here and all that is part of our systems. So, okay, this time I'm really gonna finish with the closing. So the committee will continue to receive any written comments about today's virtual public hearing. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs, and submit it via email to office.senatorkelly@guamlegislature.org or to my office located at the second floor of the Guam Congress Building. We received so many excellent pieces of testimony from the Sierra Club, from a variety of organizations and individuals, as I mentioned earlier. I wish I had time to read them all into the record, but I assure you that they will be part of the committee report and they will be available for absolutely everybody to read. So to all the students, all the professors, all the interested individuals, all the organizations and people near and far that provided that testimony, it's absolutely valuable. We absolutely appreciate it. And it will inform this resolution and this committee report and our final decisions. So with that being said, there being none as far as comments or questions any further, the committee will adjourn this virtual public hearing. Sedulus Maasi for your attendance and participation in today's virtual public hearing. The time is now 7:16. Please have a safe and a good evening and a safe and a good weekend as well. Esta.
Esta Sedulus Maasi. Thank you.